viewing one another as pathetic under the system of white supremacy?
Well, what I wrote in my book was the description of all of the non-white people on the planet under the system of white supremacy, and the word that would fit all of the victims of racism would be pitiful, meaning a word of being pitied, that which pathetic would mean approximately the same, I imagine. But that's an accurate description of people who have been rendered completely helpless and dependent by a hostile force, have become a pitiful people, a people worthy of being pitied and who need help. That would fit all of the people who are subject to the system. His system that is hostile to them, a system that also is incorrect. In other words, it's not a justice system. It's okay for people to be subject to someone. I don't like to use the word subject. I mean, I would say in a cooperative sense. All people are kind of dependent, you might say. That's the best word. It's okay for people to be dependent on someone as long as the people that they are dependent on are doing the correct and the just thing. This is not the case in the system of white supremacy. The system of white supremacy is a hostile system. So anybody who is subject to that system is a victim of hostility. If they are dependent on that system, they're in a pretty pitiful state. And that is the condition. And all of the evidence shows this.
Wow. So you think for a non-white person who's going to be honest with themselves, just looking at the evidence, that they would accept or acknowledge, recognize the fact that all non-white people, males and females, are in a pathetic, pitiful state as long as the system of white supremacy exists?
Yes, that's written in the textbook for victims of racism. That is an accurate description. Pitiful, primitive, stupid, and are silly. That's the general description. In one of those categories, or all of them in conglomerate. Some people are not stupid, they're not silly, but all come under the pitiful category. Some people are primitive. Some people are more primitive than others, meaning in a prime stage of trying to evolve from where they are to where they should be. Pitiful, primitive, stupid, and are silly. That's the description of all victims of racism. They fall in one or more of those categories, generally speaking. But all fit the pitiful description, worthy of being pitied.
I think along the same vein, when we spoke before, we were talking about the fact that most non-white people do not understand that white people control all of the activities amongst people worldwide. They dominate those activities. And one of the things that I've noticed is that non-white people will quickly jump on another non-white person for not responding to racism, white supremacy, in the way that they feel that person should have. And I feel that that demonstrates a lack of understanding of racism, white supremacy, that white supremacy means if you are not white, you are going to be in a position to observe non-white people being mistreated, and you're not going to be able to do anything about it. Do you think that's an accurate statement?
No, there's something that can be done about it. Anything that can be put apart or built up by people, anything that can be put together by people can be taken apart by people. But you have to know how it's put together.
Right.
in order to do it in a manner that makes sense. And if you're not aware that it is together and how it works, and this is why the statement in the front of the textbook for victims of racism is, if you do not understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. And that's going to be the result. So the result is, what you're looking at is confusion. Now you're looking at refined versions of confusion all over the place. And people who are confused, confusion is sort of like the preface to a lot of other things that shouldn't be happening, like anger, frustration. When you're confused, you get angry, you get frustrated, and then you just lash out. And you lash out at whoever happens to be standing near you that you perceive as being weaker than you. That's sort of a normal reaction among all confused organisms.
Do you think thus far the non-white people, no non-white person can say that they have demonstrated that they know the correct procedure for dealing with white people when they practice racism, white supremacy?
On a one-on-one basis, under some instances that has happened. I mean, people know how to deal with it, and it becomes codified to a degree. But there's nothing that is orchestrated on a long-term basis and on a consistent basis. That's why what is needed is a counter-racist code. The racists go by a code. It's very precise in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. It just about covers everything that people are engaged in from one moment to the next, all over the planet, any time of day or night, engaging in one or more of those activities, and all of these activities are interactive, meaning what happens in politics affects what happens in religion. What happens in religion affects what happens in sex. What happens in sex affects what happens in economics. What happens in economics affects what will happen in the fields of education and entertainment, and so on and so on. So the racists have figured out how to dominate the non-white people in all of these areas, and they have a code for doing so for each one of the categories. They have a way of going about doing everything that they do. The victims of the system of racism don't have any such thing that corresponds in power or even in the understanding of what is going on. So they just jump up and do anything. When something happens in the field of education, they just don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They don't know what the goals are. Nothing. They're all dependent on consulting the white supremacists and say, what do we do, about our situation? What are we supposed to be learning? And what for? For what ultimate goal? And where should we have a school? And what should we teach in the school? And in order to accomplish what? So people who are completely subjugated are just kind of wandering around bumping into each other. And then they start fighting because they did bump into each other. And this is sort of the pattern, and can be expected until the people become codified, meaning now when this happens in the field of economics, our response will be this and this and this and this, and have it very well precision orchestrated. And when this happens in the field of education, in fact, in the field of education, which is just a process of learning things that you ought to know, we will be teaching this. For what reason? Because of this reason and that reason, the other reason, and the things that we say and the things that we do, because everything in the universe is a matter of saying and doing. You have to know what to say under certain circumstances in order to get a precise result. And you have to know what to do in order to get a precise result. Just like when the tire gets flat on the car. there's a precise thing that you do in order to compensate for that, for the tire being flat. Otherwise, if you try to run on a flat tire, you're not going to get the best results, and you're going to get further damage because the vehicle is not made to do that. And it's the same with everything else in the universe. You have a precise way of addressing everything, precise way of curing diseases, a precise way of repairing something that is in need of repair, a precise way of compensating for things being out of balance. And under the system of racism, everything is out of balance because they throw it out of balance deliberately where their victims are concerned. Keep them off balance. An example of that in economics is keep them moving, dislocation. Don't let them get too set in where they are, if where they are is of benefit to them. Let them go somewhere and have a house or something or a business or whatever, and it begins to build up and build up and build up over a period of time. They set up a routine that becomes successful and seems to be off and working, and something you can depend on, rely on, and embellish and improve on. Don't let them get in this kind of situation, because then that's bad for the business of white supremacy. So keep them moving, as they say in the old Western movies. Keep them squatters on the move. Don't let them get stable. If they get stable, it'll be harder to deal with. So keep them frustrated. Keep them confused. Do this at all times in all areas of activity. Whether it's economics, whether it's education, keep them confused. In the field of religion, keep them confused. In the field of sex, keep them confused and make them more confused so that they don't even know the difference between a male and a female.